Welcome to the Imagine What's Possible podcast. In each episode of Imagine What's Possible, we talk to experts here at Flint Hill who share their knowledge and practical insights on what you can be doing right now to actively support your child's educational journey. I'm your host, Derek Brunn, Director of Sports Information here at Flint Hill, and I bring just over 5 years of experience supporting student athletes and coaches in the independent school athletics realm. Today, we'll talk to Dewayne Robinson, our Director of Athletics, about athletics in independent schools and how schools can challenge, shape, and support their athletes, whether they are picking up a ball for the first time or they've been involved in athletics since a young age. All right, Dewayne, to kick us off, please introduce yourself to our audience. Tell us about your experience as an athlete and an athletic director and kind of what moments shaped you in your perspective on sports.
Yeah, great. My name is Dewayne Robinson, Director of Athletics here at Flint Hill. I have been in athletic administration going on 16 years now. It was a passion and a calling that I felt early on and has led me to this point of my journey. Much like we say to kids when they're on the playing surfaces, like athletics is a journey. And every step along the way, you have an opportunity to pick up some amazing things. You have the opportunity to go through some challenges and understand how to navigate those. But ultimately, this stint here at Flint Hill has been one of my most enjoyable ones for a multitude of reasons. Got a junior who is going through the program now and getting to watch him in his later years as he is getting ready to cross the stage in the class of 2027. And also just the environment here at Flint Hill has really been a valuable one where I've felt like I've been able to fulfill my calling, have an impact, which was the huge thing for me on the lives of kids through this amazing thing that sports gives us. Before I dive into your other questions, man, I want to welcome you to Flint Hill. We're excited to have you here as a part of our athletic department team. I know you've been acclimated to the DMV athletic scene in your time within our conference there. How are you settling in, man? How are things going for you?
I'm okay. I'm excited to be here, man. I've like you said, I've been familiar with Flint Hill for my time in the area, and I'm excited to be here. I've already been excited to get to work, just do some cool things to kind of share our story.
Yeah, and what would you say? I know you're the interviewee here, but I'm just curious too because I feel like this could be a great segue. What would you say really attracted you to Flint Hill, just broadly? You know?
I think a big part of it was my experience as an opponent of Flint Hill.
Yeah.
I always appreciated how the coaches kind of entered the gyms and playing surfaces of the school I was at previously. I always appreciated the team's competitive nature.
Yep.
We weren't playing games. We were here to compete.
There we go.
And I like that a lot.
There we go.
So once the opportunity came open, it was a no-brainer for me.
There we go.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like I said, we're thrilled and excited to have you here, and think you're going to help us do amazing things in terms of telling our story. And we were glad to steal you away from that other school. So, but I think you asked kind of what led me to this point or what role athletics have played in my life.
I think my next question that I kind of want to talk about, kind of reflecting on your experience as an athlete.
Yeah.
Can you share a few takeaways that continue to influence how you lead and support students today?
So, the nature of athletics has changed so much from when I was an athlete. It's funny, my son and I go back and forth because, kids nowadays, they don't believe you unless there are highlights to accompany what you're saying in terms of your experience. And I have to remind him that YouTube wasn't really a thing back when we were going through athletics. But, for me, I certainly remember certain coaches that pushed me beyond just the talent, right? And, I was fortunate to develop some talent later in my life that allowed me to continue to play the game of basketball at a multitude of different levels that I had only dreamed of, right? So to be able to experience that as a result of some of the great coaches who understood that it was more than just about talent was important for me. So many times you can take advantage of your God-given talent. You can take advantage of just being naturally athletic. And we see that sometimes where people just take that for granted and they lose sight of understanding that as you continue to climb through this path of your athletic journey, you're going to see more and more kids that have the same natural talent that you do, right? And I feel like every good coach I've had has always had that adage of hard work beats talent when talent doesn't want to work hard. And so that's always been my ethos is, we have seen so many people who maybe don't have the natural talent or the natural ability beat or overcome or overtake some of those more talented people who you wouldn't expect to lose in those situations because they've had an equal focus on those values that just push you through when your talent isn't clicking for some reason. And so I think my journey of understanding the value of hard work from a young age, I wasn't always the star on the team. I had to play a multitude of different roles in my journey, and even still having to balance understanding how playing that role doesn't have to define your growth, right? Like just because this is my role right now doesn't mean that this is the box that I'm painted into. So understanding how to continue to work behind the scenes to grow and accomplish that. And so when you talk about, again, my passion and my goal in life, which I felt was my calling, which was to give some of those lessons back to our kids today, understanding that in today's world of athletics, it's all about the flashy for many people, right? It's about what am I seeing on social media? How many college offers does this kid have? And people compare themselves to that in terms of defining their success. Where I believe, when you think about roles, right? Playing your role really well, but then challenging yourself to continue to exceed beyond what that role may be. So that you're proving to yourself and then to your coaches that I am working hard. I am working behind the scenes to become this better version of myself. And that's really what it's about for me, just that continuous growth and not settling on this notion of mediocrity and what's comfortable.
I appreciate your answers to a lot of the things that I was getting from my coaches in high school and in college. So I appreciate that those are very similar.
Exactly.
I think you just mentioned year 16. You spoke on this a little bit. Why do you think the work of supporting high school athletics as an administrator is important, and how should independent schools nurture that?
So I think this goes back to what I was talking about a little bit earlier. Just the nature of athletics continues to shift, right? And a lot of times it's a trickle-down effect. We see what's happening in the collegiate athletic world. We see, the introduction of the transfer portal and what that did to people's mentality of, if I'm not getting what I want in a particular place, I can go somewhere else and get it. And you start to see sometimes that mentality trickle down to where we become laser focused on, very individualistic approaches to what we're looking for, right? I think the beauty I've always found in high school sports is that while it promotes, certainly some of the same values in terms of excellence on the playing surface, I think there is an element to it that my hope is will continue to shape and help kind of, in a sense, push back a little bit on what we're seeing in terms of the trend of feelings as it relates to athletics, which is less about what is this doing for me and more about what is the value of this, right? And when you take that approach from the beginning, my hope is that you see less of the disappointment once they're there, right? Because I feel like a lot of that disappointment is centralized around role in a sport or what that sport can do for me and less about what this experience can give me, right? I say this thing all the time when I talk to kids about, I feel like, and I had to learn this myself as an athlete, a lot of kids today use athletics as a crutch. They lean on it. It's who they are, and it's their path of getting to where they want to go, right? Without that crutch, a lot of them fall down and they're stuck. And so, when we transition our mindset from sports being a crutch that we use to get to where we want to go, and more of we're using this to gain valuable tools to put in our tool belt, right? At any given time in my journey, sports may be taken away, for whatever reason. And so understanding and getting from sports those values that we can take into other areas of life, that's what's valuable, right? The ball stopped bouncing for me at some point, but all of those lessons that I gained throughout those valuable coaches and throughout my time as an athlete, those are still bouncing in different ways. Those are still manifesting themselves in my ability to give back to kids. And I think that's the perspective we're able to take in high school athletics. Specifically when we talk about independent schools, I love the notion of being able to focus on the holistic child, right? Again, using sports as not just the essence of the sport that you're playing, but the experience that we hope you're getting, right? So that when you cross that stage, whether you were a 4-time letter recipient, whether you were a 4-time player of the year, or whether you were the 9th person on the bench, you've got experiences from those relationships, from that adversity that you face, that are going to help you understand how to navigate these different parts of life. That to me, when we talk about the wins, right? There's short-term wins and then there are long-term wins. I think that fills both of those buckets, right? In the short term, understanding and being able to have this toolkit that you can pull from to maneuver life moving forward. But then the long-term win of like being able to continue to capitalize on that, understanding how those values are taking shape in different areas of your life, and really getting to see your own progression as a child as you venture through that.
And I'm wondering, just to kind of put a name to a face, can you think of a particular student in your time here at Flint Hill that has kind of taking that approach, understanding the value of being on the sports team and run with it?
Yeah, there are so many people that come to mind that I could centralize on. I think of somebody like Ashley Giuliani, who, has been a 3-sport athlete for us, and has played a multitude of different roles. And she comes from an athletic family, but just her ability to understand the components of success that are not just defined on your talent, right? Because that's an important piece. I had the privilege of coaching her for a couple of games last year, and thinking about how her role has transcended from last year to this year. Right. But she buys in, and that's the important piece, buying into, again, not just your value in terms of talent, but your value in terms of the overall objectives. So you think of somebody like that maybe isn't the most vocal leader, but is a leader, right? And she's a leader in ways that a lot of people don't understand leadership can manifest itself. Right. So that's an important piece. There's just so many athletes. I think of, a Jane Stanley, who has been a part of our program, since the middle school, and certainly a star athlete in softball. But I've watched her this year take on, field hockey and girls basketball, which are things that, she maybe has played in her past, but to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to step into a different role and become a part of this program because I love the culture of what
in her senior year too.
In her senior year, yeah. Exactly, right? I love the culture of what those programs are building, and it's going to give me an opportunity to continue to build my toolkit in different ways, right? I've got to understand. I get a sense to feel what maybe some of my teammates are feeling in softball, right? When they're the ones that are the 8th or 9th person, and that's going to build my ability to connect with them in my sport, so on and so forth. So just so many athletes that I've seen who come into a sport and are challenged, and that's what I love about the opportunities here is we challenge students to do multiple things, and that even extends outside of athletics, right? When you think of our community as a whole, having an opportunity to excel or try something new and find a passion in that, and then have to learn how to be successful at that. That's the mirror of life, right? How many times does life throw us a curve, and we got to figure out how to get the most out of this new road that we're on. So that's a skill that when I think of those two, and there's so many others that come to mind that, that I could spend hours talking about, but that's just an example of how, getting the most out of that experience is building tools in their toolkit that hopefully will allow them to go on and just do great things in the world.
And like I said earlier, that's kind of the magic of independent schools.
Absolutely.
Right? Having them in situations where they can figure things out, experience things, maybe fail, maybe not do as well as they thought they would, but still come out with tools that'll help them
exactly. Life. And being able to seize the teachable moments is important too, right? Being able to meet kids where they are is such a huge piece of that as well that I really find valuable, right? Like we don't have to stay sold to this one specific way of doing things, right? To me, that's the value of why I chose this line of work, right? Because it does focus more on your ability to connect and understand each kid. That to me is the valuable part of coaching, right? You know, back in the 90s when I was playing and into the 2000s, like you had to fit into this box that was your coach. And if you didn't fit into that box, you were having a tough time in that sport, right? But you know, when you think of where we are today, right, a valuable coach is understanding that I may have to coach this kid a little bit differently than I coach this one, right? But ultimately, the same values exist, right? The same expectations exist, but my way of getting that out of this student may be a little bit different from the way that I get it out of this student. And that just really comes with the desire to be invested in every kid that's on your roster. So that's one of the values I see too in this area of it.
And I appreciate that. I want to pivot a little bit and speak about athletic excellence. When families hear the phrase athletic excellence, they may imagine different things like wins and championships, for example. From your perspective, what does athletic excellence mean within a school setting in today's climate, and how has your definition of success in athletics evolved over time?
So, you know, I think the first part of that question, you hit the nail on the head, which is the wide variety of viewpoints on what athletic excellence looks like is broader than ever these days, right? And some of that is tied into, again, kind of the trickle-down effect of what we're seeing in collegiate athletics. Some of that is tied to individual aspirations for families, right? For some families, you know, athletic success is my child getting the appropriate numbers so that they can get a college scholarship and so on and so forth. So there are broad, I recognize, and obviously have dealt with a lot of these broad perspectives over time. You know, the one thing I would say, though, Derek, is that I don't know necessarily that my perspective on athletic excellence has shifted, right? I think my perspective has been the one that I lived, right? Which again, ties into my approach to the experience that athletics should provide, right? I had a chance to play at a high level. I had a chance to experience, you know, the high level of expectations that come with playing at a high level. But I don't know that I would have made it there without being grounded in the ethos of athletic excellence extending beyond your talent level, right? Like, I wasn't always the most talented person. And it came to a point where I started to understand that talent didn't define athletic success, right? Who you are as a person, what's ingrained in you, and those values, right, are what will drive the rest of that you know, the rest of that bucket to success. So for me, athletic success was always about experience. Number one, what type of experience am I having? Is this an experience that is cultivating my passion for sport, or is it demeaning my passion, right? And that's not to say that doesn't happen, because I certainly experienced times where I just needed to step away from sports for a little bit, right? But my passion and my fire did not decrease. So it's very realistic to meet points where you become frustrated with sports, but every experience should continue to keep that pilot lit in your life, right? So, you know, I think in thinking broadly about what athletic success looks like, it's experience, it's relationships, right? So many people that I played with in high school, I'm still friends with today. Nice. And we don't really talk about specific scores or games or records. We talk about things that we dealt with in the locker room. We talk about funny memories that we have, you know, on bus rides. Right. We talk about funny memories we have about coaches and sayings they used to say. Like, and a lot of times as we have all evolved into parenthood, we talk about how we've taken those lessons and incorporated some of them into the ways that we parent or into our lives in whatever careers that we've decided to go into. That to me is like, again, that long-term win, right? Like in the moment, losing a game sucks, and losing a big game sucks, or having a bad game sucks in the moment. But eventually you forget about that, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the beauty of sports, is I got a chance probably a couple of days after this to come and shift that, right? But if I'm having a terrible experience, that's gonna last, right? If I'm not building relationships, there's really very little that's going to continue to motivate me to want to be better the next day, right? So Athletic success is a range of things that I think starts with the internal. And I've always believed that when you focus on those things, when you focus on cultivating those values, when you focus on creating a great experience, it's going to continue to drive that passion to be better. You're going to want to show up in the gym or on the field to continue to work on your skill because you know you've got to keep yourself accountable to the team. You've got these great relationships with teammates. And you want to continue to hold your end of the bargain up to help that team succeed. So I think that's the important piece on it. And I want to circle back and say I'm not saying that success on the playing surface is not a part of that. I'm just saying I think it has its place in the hierarchy. To me, that place is not at the top, right?
Levels
because
to this thing.
it's levels to it, right? And I don't think you meet that without that, right? And I will also say, I think there are people that meet that based on, meet that level based on their definition of it being on the playing surface. But then I feel like those are some of the people whose passions burn out at some point, right? Because at some point, it's like I've lost sight of what really is fun about this thing.
Gotta have that foundation.
Gotta have that foundation, right? And that's the way I've always gone about it, both as an administrator, but even more importantly, as a parent, right? If my child doesn't have that drive and that desire, if I'm pushing this on them, then it's my experience. It's not theirs, right? But if they want the experience and they're getting the valuable experience because of these values first, and that continues to ignite the passion to want to be great, then I'm here to support that. So,
fantastic. All right, Dwayne, just kind of wrapping up here.
Yeah.
And you just spoke on this a little bit in your last answer. Kind of in a short, brief synopsis, when a student athlete graduates from a school and reflects on their experience, what are the qualities or skills that you hope their athletics program has helped them develop?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's one word that came to mind as you were asking that question, and that is competitor, right? Now, I'm going to dive into what that means because a lot of people see competitor on the surface and they might associate that with talent, right? To me, a competitor is somebody that isn't just happy with where they are now, right? There's this continuous drive to be better at whatever you do, whatever you decide to partake in. And when I think of an athletic experience, one of the big things that I hope people walk away from is this notion of competing in life, right? And that's not to say life sometimes isn't going to knock people down. We certainly run into adversity at times. But when you have this solid desire to compete, you don't just lay there, right? I don't just drown in my woes and say, life just threw me one that I don't know how to deal with, right? I figure out how to compete and come up out of that. And so, again, athletics is such a tool from the competitive side because not everybody's going to have a great game every day, right? And so you might run into a situation where you have a bad game. You got to figure out how to not have a bad game the next game, right? And I just feel like that is such a mirror to life with the notion of I'm not going to settle. I'm not going to be happy with just where I am, right? I'm not going to be happy that I've had a good stretch of life. I'm going to celebrate that, of course. But that's not going to be the definition of where my ceiling is. Right. I'm continuing to compete to be better than that. And I just feel like that's such a relevant value for our kids to walk away with, whether it is competing for the best grades in college, whether it is competing for a position in corporate America, whether it is competing to grow your business in such a competitive market. This notion of competitiveness, I think, is sometimes what gets lost in the fold with athletics and with adversity within that too. And so that's a notion I sometimes remind families of, is that yes, adversity is a part of it, but we're still developing these kids to understand how to compete and be better outside of that. The other thing I think is just, it's the cliche answer, but it's one that I feel is valuable, which is just like the value side of things. We want our kids to be good people, right? Good people, and sports is such an opportunity to build community. I've met people I probably would have never met in life through athletics. I've seen places I never would have seen in life through athletics. And a lot of those experiences just gave me a perspective that allowed me to see the world through a different lens.
Nice.
And that's what I hope for kids when they cross that stage. That's what I hope for my child, right? Whether he decides to try to play a sport in college or to go on and do whatever he wants to do in life, right? This opportunity of competing in sports has helped you understand that, you know, not every kid is going to be looked at the same way, right? That the world sometimes places standards on you based on how talented you are. And we have an opportunity to shape perspective in the right direction with that so that, you know, you're empathetic to those who maybe serve a different role. You're not taking people for granted just because their job isn't your job or their role isn't your role or their level of talent isn't up to yours. You value all of them. You have it through, you have a view of life through a lens that is appreciative of who they are, that is still competitive and driving to be the best that you can be. And hopefully, you know, that energy spreads broadly, right? I think the more kids we're able to get that instilled into, the more that ethos just starts to spread.
Right.
And that's my hope for this thing.
Infectious through the community.
That's it. That's it. You just hope that positive energy and that competitive spirit is infectious. Right. And that ability to bounce back when the ball doesn't go your way, right? And that is such, I think, an anomaly of life. When things don't go the way we hope, that can either define the next couple of years of our lives in a very bad way, or it can reshape, right? It's that notion of like how many people apply for a job and then, you know, because they didn't get it, came up with this brilliant creation that now is a big business, right? Sometimes that failure is what leads you to your calling. And so understanding, again, competitive nature of that and having the values internally to be able to navigate that is an important piece.
Fantastic. Well, Dewayne, I'm sure we could go on for
forever. I could talk about this thing forever, man.
I appreciate your time today.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming over to our world.
I appreciate you. I want to take a moment to say that I appreciate you. And I appreciate, you know, our team of people at Flint Hill for giving us this opportunity to really dive into that, right? Absolutely. Because so many times athletics is defined by what's on the surface and what you see on the papers and what you see on social media. And I think a lot of times having the opportunity to really dive into the thick of the weeds sometimes is valuable, right? Because you could look at a scoreboard and say, we don't really think that is successful. But then once you peel back the surface and you see the work that's going into that and you see, you know, the amount of things that are being, you know, really constructed behind the scenes to give our kids, you know, the platform to be successful. I just think it's an important piece that sometimes gets overlooked. Right. And so, you know, we know the wins and the record speaks, you know, loudly to a lot of people, but I think being able to share what's behind that is equally important as well.
100%.
Yeah.
And one last step, if folks want to follow the Flint Hill Athletic Department, where can they find you guys?
Man, I think that's a question for you, SID. You know, that's what you're here to help us do, right? Is to spread our story and talk about the amazing things that we're trying to build here and the places that we're trying to go. So I'll leave that to you to share with the people how they can keep up what's going on with.
Shameless plug. Please follow Flint Hill Athletics on Instagram.
Absolutely.
At Flint Hill Athletics.
Absolutely.
And on X at, I'm not even sure what our X is, but we'll get that out.
I think it's Flint Hill Athletics in that realm. So, man, well, again, I want to extend a welcome to you, to this community. I hope you'll find, you know, this to be a fulfilling of your calling. And your ability to give back to kids. And like I said earlier, we're excited to have you here.
We'll do. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Go
man.
Huskies.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.